Welcome to No Question About That. Today with Dominic Booth. How's it going, Dominic?
Very good, thank you, Ed. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about strikers today. Rasmus Hojlund, Joshua Zirkzee, potential options in the summer. It's a tricky one for United because clearly we're not scoring goals and neither Zirkzee or Hojlund have got very many this season. And yet there's no money in the kitty. We'll get onto that a little bit because calculus has changed a little bit. But how do we get ourselves in this mess, Dominic? And how do we get ourselves out?
This has been a problem for as long as many United fans will be able to remember. It feels like a bygone day of the past when United had a proper striker, a good backup, some different options. In recent years, it's been lurching from expensive older signings to expensive younger signings who are not ready, and a couple of stopgaps in between. So it feels like United have got this wrong for absolutely ages. But then it is probably the hardest position on the pitch to find an elite option in the modern day. So Chelsea have had problems in this area. Arsenal still have problems in this area. United are the latest, and to end up with these two that we currently have, and obviously everyone knows the strengths and weaknesses of them both. I'm sure we'll probably go into that in a bit more depth, but it just feels like United are in the worst position they've been in a long era of striking problems. How they went from the sort of start of the 21-22 season when Ronaldo came with all the options they had then for a litany of reasons, they've all gone, and United are left with these two clogging around up top in the vague hope that one of them might get one in. So one goal since Christmas for both of them between them. So that's how.
And not many in total over the whole season. Yeah, I mean it's in a sense we're a victim of our own making, of course, because we made some really bad decisions over time. So we've had Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic, Falcao for a little bit in recent years as older options. It didn't really work out, at least in the longer term, for one reason or another. Zlatan had a fantastic season, then obviously had the problem with the injury, and Ronaldo had a problem with his ego, and Falcao had a problem with his legs falling off, and they were just incredibly expensive and didn't work out. And they made a conscious decision to go after younger players when Kane didn't appear to be available, or Spurs wouldn't sell him to us, or he wanted to go back to Bayern. Who knows what the real story is there? And they've gone for basically spent Kane money on Hojlund and Zirkzee. In fact, the total package, if you add them all together, plus their salaries, is about net. And we've got, less than a quarter of the goals out of it. I mean, on the wider point, it does appear to be that there are fewer number 9s now. Like forwards now seem to like playing in one of those wider positions where they can cut in and shoot. It seems to give them more freedom. There aren't too many clubs where there's a traditional sort of number 9 playing. I mean, in the Premier League, you've got Haaland and Isaac, haven't you? Even Chris Wood, the devastating Chris Wood. Spurs don't really have a natural striker, a bunch of wide players there. Chelsea, obviously Nicholas Jackson, but he's not been overwhelming success. Ollie Watkins at Villa, but he's a very different type of forward. I wouldn't call him a number 9 exactly. He's very mobile. And United have in Rasmus Hojlund someone who feels like he could be traditional, but almost does too much of that thing that we've talked about in recent weeks, where he's wanting to make it physical.
Yeah, there have been times when I've actually been in favour of United going after this non-traditional number 9 profile, and I think when Solskjaer sold Lukaku and didn't really replace him, that was a chance for United to sort of evolve the front line there. And I know Mason Greenwood was coming through at the time, was a big talent, and he basically picked Daniel James as well as a forward option who I never had a big problem with. I know some United fans hated him because they thought he was nowhere near good enough, but actually, look at what he did. He did okay. And Rashford and Martial were at the top of their games then, so you had those two sort of interchanging positions in the central and wide areas. But then United went after Hojlund and put all their eggs in that basket, and they are now committed. to Rasmus Hojlund for quite a long time in terms of wages, in terms of not being able to sell him anywhere because no one will pay anywhere near the fee United paid for him. And he was not a striker that you should have been pinning all your hopes on. He wasn't a £70 million striker. He'd had a season in Serie A. He'd been in Denmark before that, and just not of the pedigree that United should have been committing that much for. But it came across desperate, didn't it? It was the same summer as Anthony. Was it the same summer? No, it was the one after. It was that year's version of the Anthony deal where United got hung up over one player and that was it. And they were going after him and him alone.
Chased him all summer. Yeah, I mean, meteoric rise for Hojlund, really. Was he at RB Salzburg? I forget now his path. Copenhagen, Salzburg, Sturm Graz. All right, Austria, yeah. Copenhagen, where he grew up, Sturm Graz, and then Atalanta. Barely any senior football before United chased him. I mean, if they'd paid the kind of fee that we paid for Josh Zirkzee or Amad Diallo, you'd be like, yeah, all right, makes sense. Young player, like got a lot of proving and growing to do, and will help him sort of develop alongside maybe a more senior, experienced striker. And instead, we've paid in combination, as I said, Kane money for much less than Kane output, and it's been really devastating. I mean, Josh Zirkzee could probably sell back to Italy this summer if United decided he wasn't quite the right profile. He's an odd player in that he doesn't feel like a 10 or a 9, not particularly mobile, but does do some nice stuff. And you're like, oh, there's a little touch of quality in there, and score many goals, obviously. Could probably sell him because we bought him for a reasonable fee, paid that release clause. It's £35 million or 35 million euros. And we could probably sell him for close to that, or at least not an on the books loss if it was slightly below that. Hojlund, that's almost impossible. I mean, you take that £70 million fee, you divide it by 5, and there's your annual PSR costs. And take 2 years off that, and you've still got 40 something million pounds on that annualized amortized cost. Never going to get anywhere near that for him because we just massively overpaid. And we've talked about it before. You get screwed on the way in, you get screwed on the way out by overpaying players. He was also one where this was when Murtagh had taken over, and he was very prominent in this deal. And he was like, United are being smarter. I know he didn't say that, but it was the kind of noises coming out of the club. It turns out we just very much weren't being smarter at all. And now we're in this desperate bind where fans are angry. Understandably, the new INEOS-led team is making cuts all over the place, penny pinching with the sustained profit and sustainability rules for next season. Almost certainly we'll have to sell to buy. There won't be much in the kitty. Let's just make the assumption we're not going to be in Europe. And so we may well be stuck with these two next season, still not scoring any goals because they're not quite ready. It's an awful bind that the club's in.
Yeah, and it would be okay to have sort of non-scoring strikers if you had a prolific winger, say, capable of scoring maybe 30 goals in a season.
I don't know who you could be thinking about.
One of them's just gone to an actual top 4 contender, so there's no chance of that. But Bruno Fernandes used to score more goals than he is scoring now. Amad Diallo could be an elite goal scorer, but isn't yet. And what else do you have? You have Alejandro Garnacho, who's an incredibly inconsistent finisher.
Mm-hmm.
You have, that's it. That is literally it. Ethan Wheatley's gone on loan. He was a potential option. I don't think he'd be a loss because every time I saw him, he didn't look quite ready. He looked primed for a lower sort of EFL loan.
Yeah. He needs to put on a bit of muscle and get beaten up by League One players for a bit.
35-year-old League Two or League One defenders. Yeah. But then you've got a whole host of players who are again too young and not quite ready for the first team, who people rave about in the academy. I'm thinking of Chido Obi, Bianchieri, I forget the other guy's name.
Shea Lacey.
Shea Lacey is more of a winger, but yeah. There's loads of players there, but they are not ready to usurp Hojlund or Zirkzee, and they're not goal-scoring wingers to account for the shortfall in the central area, right? So, I mean, you can for the next few months.
If you have a 30-goal a season inside forward who's reliable, you can get away with not having a striker. I mean, Arsenal pre and post Saka. I mean, Saka's like 40% of their goals, basically. And Salah at Liverpool, they're still not playing with an actual striker. Darwin Núñez has been relegated to the bench, and they're playing with wingers in the central area there. So you can get away with it, even at Real Madrid, where Kylian Mbappe is playing through the middle and not very happy about it. He'd much rather be playing off the left, where Vinicius is playing. So they're not playing with a traditional striker by any means. So it's certainly an
very
option.
Very much a deluxe version of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Mbappe is the non-number 9.
Well, you've got someone with the quality of Rodrigo, who often plays off the other side, would like to be playing off the left as well, I think. And, he's the kid they beat up at Real Madrid because he's not quite as good as the rest of them, standards.
And Jude Bellingham is your goal scoring midfielder who scores 20 a season anyway. So
yeah, I mean, another player who turned us down. Jesus. Because we were not a serious club, Dominic, and that's part of the reason why we got ourselves in the mess. And I don't know how United get out of it. I mean, this is not a finance chat, but just to very quickly touch on the extension of the PSR rules. So the PSR rules, as they are now, you can make a £105 million loss. This is Premier League PSR rules. £105 million loss across 3 years, 90 of which can be covered by owner injection of capital. And United are going to be in a real bind because everyone thought we'd go to the squad cost rule next season, which would have been 70% of your costs if you're in European football, 85% if you're out. I think I mentioned with Adam when I recorded at the weekend that the worst position to be in is qualifying for the Europa League, or even worse, the conference, because you'd be in that European like 70% squad cost bracket while not getting the revenues. So United looked like it was going to be quite difficult. Extending PSR as it is might be even worse, right? It depends. Like if you take that Conference League, Europa League, and say, hey, maybe United would have got there. Seems unlikely, but let's just say that might have been even worse than not qualifying if that rule had extended. As it is, the 21-22 season drops off the PSR list for next year. That was a massive loss with a bunch of COVID losses, accounted for. They're now going to drop. And wait there, the 21-22, not as a big loss. 22-23, really big loss. 23-24, correction. We have 24-25 will be very, very tight. They'll be super, super tight. Probably spent what we can already without more sales. And then 25-26 will be really tough now. And that's all to say, I think United probably have quite a big loss to account for. And that means, Marcus Rashford his sale, assuming it happens, and let's just, hope for him and for United, if he's not going to come back and make it up with Ruben Amorim, that he's brilliant for Villa and they take up the option, or someone else really wants to pay the fee, because that would cover quite a lot of the loss. Probably. And then you're looking at what can you do? And we mentioned Hojlund and Zirkzee, and you could sell Zirkzee. I think you'd be all right selling him. He wouldn't be a massive on the books win, I don't think. But Hojlund, it'd be very difficult to sell him. And then very difficult to bring in another player without more sales. And who are those sales? Sancho would go to Chelsea. That's about net even, 25 million on PSR. And Anthony, we need about 30 million. He's doing well at Betis. First 3 games.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. But are Betis in a position to pay 30 million for him? They're a mid-table La Liga side. That seems unlikely. And,
someone may be, though.
Someone may be.
I do sort of feel like someone could be fooled into paying a bit of money for Anthony, and the loan makes sense in that regard. All of this makes sense in the context of United's season basically being a write-off already, doesn't it? And I'm guessing the club thought, well, what's the point in investing bigger in a striker this January? We're 12th or 13th in the league. We're not going to finish in Europe unless we win the Europa League. And Amorim seems happy enough to operate with the smaller squad, especially with the forward options. He's just going to play those 4 or 5, and that's it. I kind of get that. I kind of, he's playing the game as well. He's playing the long game. If he gets a big investment in January and United perform as they've been doing, then more questions are going to be pointed in his direction. So he gets the free hit. United get the free hit in a financial sense for the rest of the season. But it puts a lot of pressure on the summer, and it's Groundhog Day, because that's what happened last summer with Ten Hag. Do you back the manager? Do you bring in his players? What's the profile of the targets? Do you end up signing loads of people from Sporting Lisbon in a way that United signed loads of people from Ajax? And that is the big question. It's coming up to that really key period for the whole club. Finances, Amarin, on the pitch, off the pitch, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
They have to go after the right people, and they can't overpay. That's what we've been talking about with PSR.
Yeah, they might. I mean, Amarim said today in his press conference, we have to sell to buy. I mean, I'm paraphrasing exactly how he put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much what he was saying. So if there are options that we're thinking about for a striker in the summer, there probably likely can't be more than we can sell. Now, there will be some other options with other players leaving. Eriksen will definitely leave. He's on a big wage. That will free up some headroom. They'd love to get rid of Casemiro. He's got one extra year after this. I think he would probably prefer to go, but they're going to have to come to an arrangement on that year of his contract. Likely won't be a fee. That's tough because that's a £12 million impairment charge. So we basically...
A 4-year deal was a great idea, wasn't it?
Such a good idea. Just brilliant. Like, absolute genius paying so much. I mean, so again, to come back to the money, it's £12 million a season has his amortized transfer fee, and he gets paid more than that in wages as well. So, like, add those together, you've got 25 million, probably more like 27 million as a cost for him for next season. And like, how much of that can we get rid of? Like, there's likely an impairment on the transfer fee, because I don't think anyone will pay for him. Even Saudi didn't, right? And then can you come to an arrangement with him that if he's released on a fee, he doesn't expect compensation? And that's a tough one. Like, maybe his heart is in going back to Corinthians or wherever. Like, it would be an ideal situation. He's made enough money over his career, but just release that. Like, these are like, we're football fans, right? But we're looking at the spreadsheet going, I don't know how you make these numbers add up. There's no more money that Sir Jim can put in. He could put in as much as he likes, obviously, but there's no more money that would help United, in a PR sense. And so everything has to be done sort of organically. Yeah, a lot of people say, yeah, just as you said, like, write it off. Let's play the kids. I don't think they're ready. If we're looking at Chido Obi and going, he's a real gem, absolute records. He's scoring record numbers of goals. He's scoring in the academy level, hat-trick the other day against Chelsea for the under-18s in the FA Youth Cup. It seems like physically he seems a way away from Premier League football. Is that good for his career development to chuck him into the team like that? I mean, I just don't like. No, but so rarely does that happen that it's the right timing. Maybe it is, but it doesn't feel like it.
I mean, if anyone can, United can. I do feel like the academy is flourishing, and I'm saying this because I've just literally written a piece for the Guardian to go live this weekend about the youth players that maybe could get called upon.
Yeah. Between
now and the end of the season, and there is a chance for some of them.
They've been training with the first team. Yeah.
Kukonki as well as the centre back.
Yeah.
There's Harry Amason that was sitting in the background, but in terms of the forwards, given everything you said, and the sales that I think United will be able to push through, who is the target? Who is the dream target or the realistic target? They're probably two different people this summer, because if United finish 12th and don't win the Europa League or the FA Cup, who the hell's going to want to join them? Is Gyökeres really going to want that, even though he's worked with Amarin before? I get that. Is Osimhen going to want to come to United when he's going to have definitely bigger offers on the table? Benjamin Sesko is probably the other big name that we before. So I don't see it with any of them really.
No, it's a really difficult calculation. I mean, I feel a bit queasy about Gyökeres anyway, just because of his age profile and the cost, and the fact that he's really never done it in one of the top leagues. That's not to say he doesn't look like a really good striker. He obviously does, and he's physical and his movement's great, and he's a good finisher and all of that kind of stuff. But it's right on the borderline of one of those ones you go, oof, this could go a bit wrong, and we'll be sat here looking silly having spent our entire summer budget on a player that doesn't work out. So there's a risk there. I'm not saying he's not a good player, just feels like a risk. Osimhen, the risk is that he had one absolutely amazing season with Napoli, has been a little bit injury prone. His body just doesn't seem to hold up all the time because of the physical nature of his play, I would suggest. And then I don't think we know exactly what's gone down with Napoli, but he signed this new contract and then was sent out on loan. And the new contract has a 75 million euro release clause. So he's available for way, way, way cheaper than they were reportedly asking for 2 years ago. And he's obviously scoring goals in Turkey. He had like a bigger profile. That would just be our United appealing to him. And we can't do what we've done in the past where we're failing, but we've appealed to big name players by paying them a fat wage, right? And I'm not sure that makes sense. Like, so paying 75 million euros and then Osimhen 300 grand a week, I'm not sure we could even do it, even if he was attracted to us. And it would just be about reputation and name and status of the club rather than current success.
Feels like the wrong profile. If you consider what sort of Jason Wilcox, his preferences seems to be, if he's leading this recruitment process, which I get the sense that he is, I feel like it won't be names and it won't be anyone over the age of 25 and it won't be big wages. So there you go. That, and coupled with the fact that United aren't anywhere near as attractive a proposition as they used to be, then the options really do reduce and you are looking quite a way down the list, aren't you?
Yeah. And Sesko would have been right in that profile. I mean, he won't be on big wages, but it seems like his club is asking for a really big fee for him. And so Arsenal and Chelsea both looking for a striker this summer. Feels like he may be a better fit for one of those, just given the finances and all of that. I mean, what we could really, really do with is Sir Jim buying Carrington the Cliff, maybe even Old Trafford or the Megastore or whatever, for an exorbitant amount of money, and that would inject a ton of cash and would be allowed to do it because Chelsea sold themselves a fucking hotel. I've gone all squeaky there because it's just absolutely ridiculous. But the Premier League have, as a collective, now set a precedent there, which United could do. But so Jim can't do that until he owns the club, and that's 2 years away, right? So
there's another precedent to be followed, which is maybe just some sponsorship deals, which potentially not as by the book as they should be. I can't think of a club who might have been doing that.
Might do that, yeah. Who are fighting in court about it, yeah. Funny thing is, Sir Jim has voiced support for Manchester City in that case. I mean, like, long gain. Maybe he's thinking he wouldn't mind INEOS sponsoring various parts of, New Trafford at INEOS Park.
INEOS sponsors the manager's seat at Tottenham Ground.
I know, it's funny that
joke writes itself, I think, doesn't it?
It really does. Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with INEOS, and not to get away from strikers, but they've been pulling back from some sports sponsorships. I mean, they've cut back a little bit on their financing for the cycling team. They've fallen out with Ben Ainsley after the America's Cup, and they've refused to pay for the rest of the contract sponsoring New Zealand rugby. I mean, obviously, this is Sir Jim. I mean, like, INEOS has been downgraded because petrochemicals market doesn't look very good. They complained about the European market. I mean, there will be a big market in America because drill, baby, drill, and all of that. No environmental regulations here. Love it for my lungs, but maybe that is a switch in strategy at the parent company. But it's just to say, I mean, I'm not even sure they're in the position right now where they want to be injecting all that equity, even if they could, which they can't. So, yeah. I mean, like, if you were playing, before we leave, if you were playing God here, what would you do? I mean, you've got Sancho and Rashford look like they're leaving. They'd love to get rid of Anthony. Eriksen will definitely leave, as will Victor Lindelof. There's a lot of natural attrition here. They'll try and do a deal with Casemiro where they get him off the books, but even with the wages savings, it's going to net out at about zero. So you've got a lot of attrition that's going to happen, I think. What would you then do with your money if you're selling to buy?
I think my dream target is actually Sesko's teammate, Lois Openda.
Right. Yeah.
You want somebody of that profile, like I said before, who is more mobile, who can play in wide areas, and who you're not just sticking up front and saying you have to score goals, and if you don't, then we are putting you under serious pressure. Like Hojlund. Hojlund doesn't do much other than stay within the width of the penalty box, and he doesn't even score goals. So I think I would like somebody who, like prime Rashford, prime Martial, could operate in those wide areas, could make United that fluid attack that that they've just not been, like, so
Yeah.
rarely. I mean, yeah, I'm struggling to think of a period when in under Ten Hag when United were like that. Um, it's never really worked with Rashford being that guy. So, but I do think that it's the way to go. I think, even Arsenal with Havertz and a goal scoring winger, maybe you would need to supplement a Pender with another attacking player. And if you're going to get rid of Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, you got to bring in more than one attacking player, right? So that's my
Yeah.
dream: is that a mobile striker, a winger who can play on either side, who will chip in with a good amount of goals. But that's probably I'm probably setting my target 150 million pound spend there, aren't I? So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, and
dream.
there isn't an option for a big sale. Garnacho's the only one, right? His sale might, for 1 year only, like fund some spending. You then have a problem with years 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 on the amortization of that 150 million spending. But like
If you
that
bid
would be
Garnacho, that's another attacking player you have to sign.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when when Amarim first joined, I think I said Dan and I were talking on this show about it. I was like, yeah, I'm a bit worried about Garnacho's profile in this system. Not sure if it'll work, but I think Rashford will do really well. Right, he's an intelligent footballer. He can. It's not just inside forward cutting in and shooting. He's a great passer and has got a bunch of got vision, and he's that kind of multifunctional forward that I thought would suit well. How wrong was I? Completely wrong. But I mean, that's the problem. You find on the internet, you're going to be wrong.
there's
I thought
logic
it.
there, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was the logic. I thought it would work out. It was interesting last weekend when Amram talked about it, and he said he's a very good player, and I hope he does well under Emery. And sometimes you have players that we had a conversation, we just couldn't see eye to eye on things. What he didn't say, which was interesting, was he just doesn't work hard enough, right? It seemed to be a real lack of meeting of minds around profile tactics, what he wanted to do in the game. Either Rashford couldn't or wouldn't do it, didn't want to. They disagreed on what his role should be. Guess that happens in football, and if it's just not going to work out, then we have to move him on. The club has moved on, better players, and we live to fight another day, and all of that. It's just you could really do with a player who scores a lot of goals, and I mean, I know it's nostalgia looking back 2 years how we could do with that Marcus Rashford desperately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the COVID era was sort of my favourite post Fergie attacks
Played
that,
some
that we
great
had.
football as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's that fluidity that I'm talking about. It's
yeah,
just a dream, and what the best teams do. Haaland for City is a complete outlier, really, in terms of how few touches he has and how he
yeah.
just stays in the penalty box and scores so many goals. Everyone else is operating in a different way now, and I'd love United to get there. It doesn't look any like it's
I
happening
was
anytime
watching.
soon.
No, it doesn't. Sadly, I was watching videos of 2008 the other day. I don't know why nostalgia, and I was just thinking what we had then: Ronaldo,
That's it,
Rooney,
innit?
Tevez, Berbatov. Fuck me, what a load of unbelievable quality. And
And to
people were
be
moaning
completely
about
frank,
Berbatov not working hard enough, and just look at some of how good he was. Just so far away from that. 99, obviously different profiles of players, much more traditional. That was before the kind of evolution into Fergie's last great team and the flexibility with that. But yeah, we're so far off. We've done to ourselves. Even from COVID era, 4 years ago,
it's
Rashford,
remarkable,
Martial
absolutely.
scoring goals to what we've got now. Yeah, it's really desperate times. And the bet is, if we're talking about the strategy on younger players, the bet is that we can be smarter than everyone else, right? And that's from being one of the dumbest clubs in European football. I mean that in totally sincere, non-hyperbolic fashion, although it sounds it. We are being
No,
one of the dumbest football clubs in Europe for a decade. And we've got to go from that to outthinking the market, because that's the bet that we can't, we don't outspend the market. We're going to reduce our wages to, let's say, sub 150 million, right? A year, just for player wages. It's probably 180 or something this year, something like that. They're obviously trying to reduce the non-player wages, which is devastating for people at the club who've it's their dream job and their livelihood, and they're no longer there because Anthony's shit. It's sorry, that was a bit hyperbolic.
that's probably
But so we're
quite
in this
accurate.
position now where we have to be smarter than everyone else, right? And it just doesn't really happen, right? You don't really get sustained smarter than everyone else, because football is the most competitive industry on the planet. everyone wants to kill each other, right? There are 20 other clubs in the domestic league and hundreds in Europe who we're trying to compete with for the same players.
And United can't be at Brighton. It feels like United can't really ever punch above their weight. They could, if they punched at their weight, they'd be competing for titles and winning them. United can't do this unearthing young gems thing and paying nothing for them and selling them on. It's just not feasible because United have to pay money because people charge United lots of money for their players. And United are a terrible selling club and have been since the day dot. So,
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening. Like you say, if United can be smarter, a little bit smarter, then they may come a fair distance. But they have, like you say, it's a long way to travel from the point they were at.
All right. On that wonderfully cheery note, Dominic, we'll call
Sorry,
it a day there. Yeah, no, I mean, look, you have to laugh because otherwise you'd cry. It is a really difficult spot. I'm going to try and do more on finances. I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm actually going to do a finance show with somebody shortly, unannounced. So I'll let people know. But I think there's a lot to dig into. It's a really difficult spot. It's going to be a couple of years to get out of this. We might have to be really patient as fans. We're not really well known for that, football fans, having patience. But some tough times ahead, I think. All right, Dominic, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed. Pleasure as always.
Listeners, catch you again soon.